They didn't expect you to survive this version of the war. They tried everything: lies, rumors, silence, manipulation, fake kindness, even public humiliation, all to get you to fold, to go back to being predictable, obedient, emotionally available. They didn't want you to change. They wanted control over the version of you that needed their validation just to breathe. But you didn't fold. You watched them betray you, sabotage you, use you, and still you didn't react. That's what broke them. They were waiting for rage, begging for weakness, hoping for the old version of you to scream back. But instead, you upgraded. You didn't beg for closure. You became it. You didn't ask for respect. You reclaimed it. You didn't scream. You disappeared. And now the silence is louder than their chaos. Your enemies? They don't talk about it in public, but behind closed doors, they're panicking. Your detachment? It's haunting them. Your new energy? It's unpredictable. Your mind? That's the part they fear most now. You made a move so powerful, it rewrote the narrative they were trying to trap you in. If this message already feels personal, pause for 1 second and hit that like button and subscribe to keep this energy alive. You're not just watching, you're part of something real. This message isn't a video, it's a mirror. Now back to it. See, you didn't just walk away. You made them feel small by doing nothing at all. That's the difference. Most people get emotional. You got intentional. And here's the truth they'll never admit. They were never stronger than you. You were just too loyal to see how fake they were. When you were showing love, they were studying your weaknesses. When you were being real, they were playing roles. When you gave your all, they gave just enough to keep you guessing. But the moment you stopped trying to prove yourself, that's when the scales tipped. That's when they started losing sleep. That's when your silence started speaking. They're not scared of your voice. They're scared of your discipline. They're scared of your self-control, because it means you're no longer under their influence. And in a world full of people addicted to attention, nothing is more terrifying than someone who doesn't need to be understood. This shift you've made, it's not surface level. This isn't new year, new me. This is deeper. This is years of betrayal, lessons, reflection, and solitude finally transforming into precision. You're no longer thinking from emotion. You're moving from wisdom. And don't get it twisted. This wasn't about becoming cold. This was about becoming clear. Remember the nights you cried over people who didn't even care they were hurting you? Remember how they made you feel crazy for asking for basic respect? Remember how they painted you as too much when all you wanted was honesty? You were never too much. You were just too aware for their comfort. And now you've stopped handing access to people who only show up to take. You've stopped explaining yourself to people who already made up their mind. You've stopped arguing with fools who want attention, not truth. You've become something rare. You've become untouchable. Because now your mind is your weapon. You no longer just think, you calculate. You no longer just feel, you filter. You no longer just respond, you choose. Every thought now has purpose. Every silence now has weight. Every step now has strategy. You're no longer living in reaction. You're living in design. Let them talk. Let them wonder. Let them feel confused. That confusion is the price they pay for underestimating you. They spent so long thinking they had you figured out. Now they can't even figure out who you've become. And that's the power shift. You didn't evolve for revenge. You evolved because peace became more valuable than proving points. You evolved because healing became more important than attention. And now they know your silence was never weakness. It was calculation. Your distance was never bitterness. It was elevation. Your growth was never personal. It was necessary. Welcome to the aftermath. The storm is over. The battlefield is quiet. But the air has changed. And those who tried to bury you are now the ones looking over their shoulder because they know you're not who you used to be. You're sharper, you're calmer, you're colder, but not in heart, in awareness. This is what it looks like when a mind becomes a weapon. This is what it sounds like when a soul chooses peace over approval. This is what it feels like when the chosen ones stop chasing and start mastering. This is your moment. This is your warning. And this is just the beginning. So now, chosen one, lean in. You didn't just make a move. You triggered a shift the world wasn't ready for. Your thinking, sharp, clean and unapologetically evolved, has officially become too dangerous for the old system to ignore. That's why they're watching, that's why they're whispering, that's why everything suddenly feels different. So if you're feeling that pull in your gut right now, the quiet knowing that you're not who you used to be, don't scroll away. This isn't just a message, this is your blueprint, and we're about to break it down step by step. Stay locked in, because every second from here forward will show you exactly why they fear what you've become. Drop 777 in the comments if you know deep down this isn't just information, it's confirmation. You've already made the move. Now let's study the power behind it. Let's dissect the mindset. Let's expose the game. Let's go deeper into what makes your thinking the most dangerous thing in the room. This is your next evolution. Let's begin. Number 1, you didn't react, and that's why they hate you. You took away their favorite weapon, your reaction, and now they're powerless, exposed, and forced to face their own weakness in silence. They weren't expecting you to go silent. They never planned for that. They thought you'd break, scream, over-explain, or beg. They built their entire strategy on the assumption that you'd always respond, that they could poke you and get a reaction, like clockwork. But then you did the one thing they never saw coming. You didn't respond. You watched the chaos unfold, and you chose not to step into it. That silence, it wasn't empty, it was surgical, and it cut deeper than any words ever could. You see, they didn't just want your attention, they were feeding off it. Every insult they threw, every passive-aggressive jab, every fake apology, it wasn't random, it was bait. And when you stopped biting, everything they built on your reaction started to fall apart. Let that sink in. You weren't part of their drama. You were the fuel. And the moment you unplugged, their little power games crashed. Now they're left with all the noise they created and no one to echo it back. That's not just a loss for them, it's an identity crisis. Because without your emotional response, they realize how meaningless their control really was. They're furious, but not because you hurt them. They're furious because you healed, because now your calm makes them look unstable. Your silence makes them feel invisible. Your peace screams in places where they used to be the loudest voice in the room. They don't hate you because you're toxic. They hate you because you're clean. You outgrew the entire storyline they were trying to keep you trapped in. You stopped playing the part. You exited the stage. And now they're performing to an empty audience, trying to provoke a ghost. That hurts them more than anything else, because they don't know who to be without someone to manipulate. And more than anything, they hate that the person who used to fall apart at their feet now walks past them like they don't even exist. Let's make it even clearer. Your silence wasn't weakness. It was the collapse of a system that needed your voice, your reaction, your confusion, just to stay alive. But you got smart. You realized that not every accusation deserves an explanation. Not every attack requires defense. some things only survive if you respond, and you stopped responding. You became untouchable, not by fighting harder, but by choosing not to fight at all. That's what they don't understand. You didn't lose the argument. You stopped giving it air. You didn't get outplayed. You left the game entirely. And now the board is still set, the pieces still frozen, and no one knows what move to make next, because the only player that mattered walked away. Think about it. When did everything start shifting? It wasn't when you got louder. It wasn't when you finally snapped. It was the day you stopped answering the calls, the texts, the fake emergencies. It was when you stopped justifying your decisions, when you started trusting your intuition over their manipulation. That's when the silence got heavy. That's when the tables turned. People underestimate how loud silence can be until they're sitting in it, desperate for a reaction that never comes. And if they try to act like it doesn't affect them, that's the funniest part. They'll talk about how cold you've become, how you changed, how you're not the same. Of course you're not. Growth is offensive to people who need you to stay small. You didn't just change, you leveled up, and they're still stuck playing the same games at the same table, wondering why it feels so empty. This is why they're mad. Not because you became cruel, but because you became unavailable. You stopped offering free access to your peace. You stopped handing out emotional reactions like coupons, and they can't stand that they don't have the same power over you anymore. Because let's be honest, they never loved you. They loved controlling you. They loved the version of you that didn't know your worth. And now that you do, they can't stand the reflection staring back at them. They can't use guilt anymore. They can't trigger your insecurities. They can't press the buttons you've ripped out of the panel. You've stripped them of every tool they use to pull you back in, and now they're empty-handed, exposed, and enraged, because people who thrive on manipulation don't know what to do when the manipulation stops working. They panic, they lash out, but nothing lands anymore. Because you're not just healed, you're upgraded, and you earned that. Every tear, every sleepless night, every time you bit your tongue while they disrespected you, every moment you doubted yourself, that wasn't weakness. That was the pressure building, and now that pressure has turned you into something stronger, colder, more aware, you're no longer reactive, you're reflective. You don't waste time trying to prove anything. You just move differently now. You've become the storm they can't predict, the silence they can't shake, the distance they can't cross. And that is why they hate you. They hate that you're no longer their puppet. They hate that your peace is louder than their noise. They hate that the same mind they tried to break now walks around stronger than ever, with zero interest in giving them another chance to try. So if you're wondering why certain people suddenly disappeared, if you're wondering why some connections faded, why some friends went cold, why some lovers turned bitter, it's because they realized they have no power without your reaction, and that truth cuts deep. They can't touch you anymore. And that's killing them inside. Keep walking, keep rising. You've already won the moment you chose not to play. Number 2, you became the algorithm they couldn't outsmart. They built the trap using the old version of you. Now they're stuck inside it because the code changed and you never told them. They thought they had you downloaded. That's the truth. For a long time, they believed they had the full blueprint to your behavior, how you think, how you feel, what makes you flinch, what makes you give in. You were their experiment, and they ran simulations on you like a machine. If they pushed here, you'd cry. If they pulled back, you'd chase. If they ignored you long enough, you'd come running, begging for clarity, apologizing for their mistakes. You were predictable. Easy to manipulate, like pressing enter and watching a known outcome appear on screen. But then, you changed the damn program. You didn't warn them, you didn't post about it, you didn't make an announcement, you just quietly upgraded mid-battle, and suddenly the pattern they depended on started glitching. What used to trigger you? Nothing. What used to bait you? Irrelevant. What used to make you spiral? Silence. That's when panic set in. Because they weren't dealing with the same version of you anymore, and they knew it. You became unreadable, untrackable, unhackable. You became the algorithm they couldn't outsmart. The scariest kind of person is the one who keeps evolving after you think you've got them figured out. Imagine this. You've been watching a security camera feed for weeks. Every day at 3 p.m., a car pulls up. Same color, same sound, same driver. You get used to it. You start to plan your actions around it. You assume it'll always be there. But one day, the car doesn't show. Not at 3 o'clock, not at all. And now, you're staring at the screen, heart racing, asking questions you never thought you'd ask. Where did they go? Why did they stop? What changed? That's what they feel now. Total disruption. They tried to box you in, like a math problem they could solve with enough trial and error. But you're not math anymore. You're chaos dressed in discipline. You're stillness wrapped in strategy. You're no longer a formula. They can't plug in the same inputs and expect the same result. Every move you make now comes from self-awareness, not survival. You're no longer reacting to them, you're responding to truth. And that's what they never prepared for. They studied your old habits, they memorized your weaknesses, they catalogued every moment of vulnerability like data points. But while they were watching, you were transforming. You were building new code in silence, piece by piece. You were debugging every wound, patching every crack. And now, the program they wrote for you doesn't run anymore. They type in manipulation and get nothing. They input guilt, and it crashes. They try silence, and you stay unbothered. They test jealousy, and you ignore the bait. When people can no longer predict you, they can no longer control you, and that's when their illusion of power dies. You stopped absorbing their energy. You started analyzing it. You began seeing patterns in their behavior that used to confuse you. You realized that every compliment had a string. Every apology came with a reset plan. Every sudden interest in you was tied to a hidden agenda. And once you saw it, you couldn't unsee it. They were never there for the real you. They were there for the version of you that didn't know any better. They were there for the version of you that explained everything and blamed yourself for being misunderstood. But that version of you, deleted. Now, they don't know how to talk to you. They don't know what tone to use, what story to tell, what performance to act out. Because you don't respond the way you used to. You read between lines now. You feel the energy behind the words. You don't chase clarity. You sit in the silence and watch who gets uncomfortable first. You used to be easy to reach. Now they need a key they no longer have because you changed the lock. They hate that they can't pin you down. They hate that you're calm in moments you used to explode, that you laugh at tricks that once broke you, that you disappear instead of beg. They hate it because it exposes their whole strategy. Without you reacting, their entire act looks childish and hollow. What they never understood is that your intelligence was never loud, it was just kind, and when that kindness was taken for stupidity, they grew arrogant. They thought they had you cornered, they thought they had control. But now you've taught them something they never expected. Intelligence plus discipline equals invisibility. You became the kind of presence that doesn't need to be loud to be powerful. You don't need to flex. You don't need to announce. You just move in silence, and suddenly everyone's adjusting to you. That's not manipulation. That's evolution. They tried to win the game, and you rebuilt the board. You're not playing hard to get. You're just done being easy to fool. And maybe you're asking yourself, but what if they come back? What if they suddenly act right? Let me tell you something real. People don't change when the game is still working. They only shift when it stops serving them. And now that the old methods don't work on you, they'll either crash or pretend to grow. Don't fall for the performance. Real growth is not reactive, it's independent. If they only get better after losing control of you, that's not growth. That's panic. You didn't become distant. You became encrypted, and they can't decode you anymore. So let them guess, let them spiral, let them wonder how the same person they used to manipulate is now the most stable force in the room. You earned that through pain, through detachment, through choosing logic over reaction and truth over comfort. You don't need to tell them you changed. They feel it, they fear it, and they'll never admit it. But deep down, they know your mind evolved faster than their games. And now, you're not just the algorithm, you're the entire system, self-aware, self-updating, and untouchable. Keep it that way. Number 3, you pulled back, and that's when they started drowning. You didn't cut them off to be cruel. You cut the cord because they were using it to strangle your peace. They used to run off your energy like it was fuel. Every reaction, every explanation, every time you showed up to defend yourself, it gave them power. It kept their ego fed, their image intact, their games alive. You didn't even realize it at first. You thought you were doing the right thing, being compassionate, being present, being emotionally available. But they weren't interested in connection. They were addicted to control. And then something inside you shifted. You detached, quietly, strategically, emotionally. Not because you stopped caring, but because you started thinking. That single move, it ruined them. Because you weren't just another person in their life. You were the power source. You gave them fire they didn't earn. They mistook your kindness for dependence. They believed you'd never pull away because you always came back before. But when you finally didn't, they panicked. You didn't stop loving. You stopped bleeding for people who only showed up to watch you suffer. Imagine someone yanking a cord from a wall. Everything shuts down. Lights, sound, movement. That's what your detachment did to their whole system. You were the outlet. They just didn't think you had the strength to unplug yourself. And now they call you cold. They say you changed. Of course they do, because they can't feel warm anymore without your fire. You weren't being cruel. You were being clear. You realized your emotions were being treated like a buffet, people taking what they wanted and leaving the mess behind. So you shut the kitchen down. They'll never say it out loud, but they miss the version of you that over-explained, that kept trying, that gave second and third chances, because that version made them feel important. This version makes them feel invisible. The ones who called you too sensitive now miss the way you used to feel everything. Your detachment exposed them. Their whole identity was built on how you responded. Without your energy, they don't know who they are anymore. And now, they're not just missing your attention, they're drowning in their own emptiness. That's what happens when you take your power back. Keep it. Number 4. They can't read you anymore, and that's what's breaking them. You stopped handing out the blueprint to your soul. Now they're stuck playing chess without knowing what game you're playing. They used to understand you, too well. You told them everything. You felt everything out loud. You gave full access to your inner world, thinking it was connection. But all you did was hand over the controls. And every time they needed power, they pushed the same buttons. But that version of you is gone now. You move different. You don't overshare. You don't explain. You don't defend what doesn't need defending, and it's driving them insane. Predictability is a cage. You shattered it and walked out without a sound. You became unreadable, not by accident, but on purpose. You realized that being fully understood made you easy to predict, and being predictable made you easy to control. So you started talking less and observing more. You learned to answer with silence. You discovered how to say everything without saying anything at all. Imagine standing in front of a locked safe. No matter how much you knock, twist, or threaten, it won't open unless it wants to. That's you now, emotionally encrypted, psychologically sealed. They don't know if your kindness means peace or patience. They don't know if your silence is forgiveness or calculation. They don't know which version of you they're dealing with. And that uncertainty is a power most people never learn to hold. They can't manipulate what they can't define. They'll say you've changed, that you're not the same. But what they really mean is this: you've become difficult to control. You no longer narrate your every move. You no longer spill thoughts to people who only listen to use them against you. You've become mystery, quiet but aware, soft-spoken but sharp, not cold, not fake, just hidden by design. And no, this isn't a defense mechanism. This is evolution. This is protection. This is what happens when someone who used to bleed openly finally learns to bandage in private. Let them wonder. Let them guess. Let them spiral trying to decode the silence. They're not mad because you disappeared. They're mad because now they can't read the map. And even if they could, you've already moved. Number 5. You didn't flex power. You became it. Real power doesn't need a stage. It walks in and the room adjusts. They expected power to look like noise, loud voices, big threats, constant presence. That's how they tried to play it. Arrogance disguised as confidence, control dressed up as leadership. But you redefined all of it. You don't need to be loud to be felt. You don't need to announce yourself to be known. You walk in and the atmosphere shifts, eyes move, energy recalibrates. Without saying a word, people sense something different. That's not ego. That's presence. They used to mistake your silence for passivity. They thought your peace was weakness. They thought if you weren't reacting, you weren't aware. But what they didn't realize is this: you were studying. You were observing the game they were playing, not to join it, but to redesign it from the outside. You don't fight for the spotlight anymore. You became the light source. You've replaced aggression with clarity. You've replaced shouting with strategy. And now people don't fear your wrath. They respect your awareness. You don't threaten anyone, but your composure exposes them. You don't correct lies. They crumble next to your truth. Imagine walking into a room where everyone's trying to impress, compete, outshine. And then you step in, calm, still, controlled. No one can explain it, but suddenly the noise dies down. That's power, not forced, not performed, just present. And no, you didn't get here by accident. You earned this through emotional labor, through understanding your own triggers, mastering your reactions, and refusing to let chaos write your story. Power isn't how loud you can speak. It's how silent you can stay while everyone else reveals themselves. This is why they don't know how to deal with you anymore, because you don't react, you reflect. You don't chase respect, you command it. You don't perform strength, you carry it. Now their games fall flat. Their manipulation hits air. Their drama feels small because your very existence now requires people to level up or step out. You didn't just shift energy, you redefined the blueprint. You became the standard, and they're still trying to figure out how. Your stability shook the ones pretending to be strong. Greater than, you didn't say a word, but your silence screamed everything they were trying to hide. You didn't have to expose anyone, you just stood your ground. And that alone made people crumble, because your presence became a mirror. And when weak minds looked into it, they saw the truth they'd been trying to bury. Your strength wasn't in domination, it was in restraint. While they lashed out, you stayed still. While they projected, you processed. While they collapsed under pressure, you breathed through it. That's what made you intimidating. Not because you're loud, not because you're violent, but because you're unshakable. They couldn't rattle you, and that pissed them off, because people who rely on chaos can't survive next to calm. It exposes their lack of control. They weren't ready for someone who didn't flinch when provoked. That's what made you dangerous. Imagine two people in a storm. One is screaming, panicking, trying to grab control. The other is standing still, eyes closed, centered. Guess who's really in control? That was you, and they hated you for it. Not because you did something to them, but because you did nothing. You didn't need to outsmart them, you outlasted them. That's a different kind of win. And they'll try to twist it. They'll call you distant, cold, disconnected. But what they're really saying is, you didn't fall for my performance, and now I feel exposed. Greater than, you forced them to confront the fact that their strength was an act, and yours was real. Your ability to hold yourself together while others fall apart isn't arrogance, it's discipline. It's years of learning not to let emotions control your every move. It's wisdom earned through fire, not just surviving the pain, but mastering your mind through it. So no, you're not intimidating. You're evolved, you're trained, and they're still running on impulses. That's why they hate your calm. It unmasks their chaos. That's why they call you hard. It exposes how fragile they really are. That's why they envy your power, because it can't be faked. You became the test they didn't study for, and when they failed, they didn't blame the test. They blamed you. Keep standing firm. You're not triggering them. Their lack of discipline is. Number 6. Your stability shook the ones pretending to be strong. You didn't say a word, but your silence screamed everything they were trying to hide. You didn't have to expose anyone. You just stood your ground. And that alone made people crumble. Because your presence became a mirror, and when weak minds looked into it, they saw the truth they'd been trying to bury. Your strength wasn't in domination, it was in restraint. While they lashed out, you stayed still. While they projected, you processed. While they collapsed under pressure, you breathed through it. That's what made you intimidating. Not because you're loud, not because you're violent, but because you're unshakable. They couldn't rattle you, and that pissed them off, because people who rely on chaos can't survive next to calm. It exposes their lack of control. They weren't ready for someone who didn't flinch when provoked. That's what made you dangerous. Imagine two people in a storm. One is screaming, panicking, trying to grab control. The other is standing still, eyes closed, centered. Guess who's really in control? That was you, and they hated you for it. Not because you did something to them, but because you did nothing. You didn't need to outsmart them, you outlasted them. That's a different kind of win. And they'll try to twist it. They'll call you distant, cold, disconnected. But what they're really saying is, you didn't fall for my performance, and now I feel exposed. You forced them to confront the fact that their strength was an act, and yours was real. Your ability to hold yourself together while others fall apart isn't arrogance, it's discipline. It's years of learning not to let emotions control your every move. It's wisdom earned through fire, not just surviving the pain, but mastering your mind through it. So no, you're not intimidating, you're evolved, you're trained, and they're still running on impulses. That's why they hate your calm. It unmasks their chaos. That's why they call you hard. It exposes how fragile they really are. That's why they envy your power, because it can't be faked. You became the test they didn't study for, and when they failed, they didn't blame the test. They blamed you. Keep standing firm. You're not triggering them. Their lack of discipline is. Number 7. You stopped explaining and started controlling the story. They don't hate you because you lied. They hate you because you stopped letting them twist your truth. You used to explain everything, your feelings, your choices, your heart. You gave them access to your soul like it was a trial and you were the defendant. But no matter how honest you were, it never landed. They were never listening to understand. They were listening to spin it, to reframe your truth into a weapon against you. Until one day, you stopped. You stopped trying to be understood by people committed to misunderstanding you. You stopped proving your worth to people who only saw what they wanted to see. You stopped defending yourself in conversations that were never fair to begin with. You don't owe clarity to anyone who's already decided you're the villain in their story. And that's when everything changed. You became the narrator, not the character. You chose silence when they expected justification. You shared less when they wanted more. You pulled back your energy, not out of fear, but out of strategy. Imagine watching a movie with no sound. You're forced to focus. You read every expression. Every pause feels heavier. That's you now. You've made your silence loud. You've made your stillness speak. Now they don't know what to do. They can't twist your words because you don't give them any. They can't paint you as reactive because you don't even show up to the scene. You've stripped away their control by refusing to participate in their version of the story. When you stop feeding the lies, the truth gets louder. They're not confused by your distance. They're frustrated by their own powerlessness. You're no longer the open book they used to skim through and quote out of context. You're a locked journal now. Pages reserved only for those who've earned the right to understand them. And guess what? That's not manipulation. That's self-respect. That's boundaries. That's ownership. You've made peace your proof, strategy your sentence, and now the same ones who tried to rewrite your identity are stuck watching the narrative slip out of their hands. You're not just telling your story now, you're curating the legacy, and they're no longer invited to write in it. Number 8. You closed the curtain, and that's when they lost control. They didn't want honesty, they wanted access, and when you took it back, they called it distance. You used to let everyone in. You shared your thoughts, your plans, your emotions, thinking it made you strong, thinking it proved you had nothing to hide. But in reality, it made you an open target. Because not everyone was listening to understand, some were listening to use, so you changed. You realized that exposure without discernment isn't power, it's vulnerability leaking in all directions, and you were bleeding truth to people who never earned your trust. You weren't being transparent, you were being available, too available. What they called openness was really just you making yourself easy to read and even easier to manipulate. So you stopped. You stopped oversharing. You stopped giving people a front row seat to your transformation. You stopped letting others scan your emotions like a weather report. And the silence, oh, it killed them. Now they're left guessing, Is she planning something? Is he upset? Why is everything so quiet? Exactly. That guessing is your new power. Mystery doesn't push people away. It just forces them to slow down and earn what they once took for free. Imagine walking into a room that used to have glass walls, but now it's all mirrors. They can't see in anymore, but everywhere they turn, all they see is themselves. That's what your mystery does. It reflects, it exposes, it removes the comfort of predictability and replaces it with the tension of uncertainty. And no, this isn't about being cold. It's about being intentional. You still feel deeply, you still care. You're just not letting people access the rawest parts of you without proving they're safe. You've learned that people don't respect what's always available. They don't protect what they didn't earn. So now you're a closed vault with layers they'll never unlock unless they come correct. The loudest power move is silence, followed by watching who can't handle it. Let them project. Let them assume. Every story they make up in your silence is a confession they didn't mean to share. You didn't disappear. You just stopped putting yourself on display. And the mystery you've become, that's your armor now, and it's bulletproof. Number 9. You think like it's already over, and that's why you always win. While they're stuck in the heat of the moment, you're already standing at the finish line, calm, calculated, and 10 steps ahead. Most people live stuck in the middle, reacting to every trigger, every insult, every surprise like it's the final chapter. But not you, not anymore. You don't operate from impulse. You don't get lost in the noise. You've trained yourself to zoom out, look forward, and move like the outcome is already decided. You think from the end, and that changes everything. You're not moved by temporary chaos because you've already studied how it ends. You've already run the mental simulations, seen how people behave under pressure, and mapped how every choice could unfold. So while they're busy trying to provoke you, you're playing moves that won't even make sense to them until 3 weeks from now. Emotional players lose to logical thinkers every single time. Imagine 2 people in a maze. One's running in circles, chasing every dead end, panicking when they hit a wall. The other, they're standing above it, calmly watching the layout, planning the next step. That's how you move now. Strategic, unbothered, always observing from elevation. This is why they can't manipulate you anymore, because their tricks only work on people who are stuck reacting in real time. But you've already anticipated their tactics. You've already accounted for their desperation. You saw the betrayal before it happened. You heard the lie before it was spoken. That's not paranoia. That's pattern recognition. You're not cold. You're just calculated. And that makes you untouchable to those who only know how to fight emotionally. They want to see you panic. They want to catch you off guard. But you've trained your nervous system to slow down when others speed up. You've built mental immunity by planning through every scenario, not just the ideal one. And now your movements scare people because you don't flinch. You don't over-explain. You don't lose sleep over temporary noise. You act like a grandmaster. Every step has purpose. Every silence is loaded. Every pause is strategy. They'll say you're emotionless, that you're disconnected. But here's the truth. You just stopped fighting battles in the middle because you already know how they end, and you've already won. Number 10. You don't adapt to the room. The room adapts to you. You used to chase the vibe. Now you are the frequency. Either they match it or they fall out of range. There was a time you bent yourself out of shape just to keep the peace. You lowered your tone so others could feel louder. You shrank your spirit to make them comfortable. You filtered your truth so you wouldn't lose connection. But all that did was disconnect you from yourself. Until one day, you stopped adjusting. You stopped searching for alignment outside of you. You stopped chasing environments that couldn't hold your energy. You stopped trying to fit in to spaces you were born to elevate. And when you did, something wild happened. Everything around you started shifting instead. The moment you trusted your frequency, you became the tuning fork. People either resonated with you or broke apart trying. Now you walk into rooms and without saying a word, the energy changes. Not because you're trying to dominate, but because you're finally walking in truth. And truth carries a gravity. It pulls the real close and pushes the fake straight out. Imagine standing still while everyone else adjusts their volume, posture and mood just to match your calm. That's not arrogance, that's alignment. That's what happens when you become so in tune with yourself. The noise outside can't distract you anymore. You're no longer chasing vibes, you embody them. They can't figure out how you do it, why you never need to prove yourself, why you're not bothered when you're misunderstood, why you don't force connections anymore, because you've figured it out. Real power isn't being liked, it's being aligned. When you become the frequency, your presence filters the room. Now your silence is a test. Your peace is a boundary. Your presence is a spotlight that reveals the truth in everyone it touches. You don't beg for energy that matches yours. You attract it. You don't convince people to understand you. You live in a way that makes explanation unnecessary. You don't adapt to confusion. You move with clarity that burns straight through it. You are the alignment now. And anyone who can't handle that frequency, they're not out of your life by accident. They got filtered out by your energy. Number 11, you turned pain into a lie detector. They thought they were breaking you, but they were just uploading intel into your system. Every betrayal, every lie, every heartbreak. You didn't just feel it, you documented it. You didn't numb the pain, you studied it. While others tried to run from the chaos, you stayed long enough to extract the blueprint. And now, you've become what they fear most. Someone who remembers. Your pain didn't make you bitter, it made you precise. You stopped asking, "Why did they do this to me?" and started asking, "What pattern did I miss?" You became a student of your own suffering, and that turned your scars into surveillance equipment. You don't just feel energy now, you decode it. Imagine walking into a room and instantly knowing who's hiding something, not because they said anything wrong, but because their timing, their tone, their eyes, they all match files already stored in your emotional database. You've seen this story before, and you already know how it ends. That's what your pain taught you. Not just survival, but navigation. You feel a slight pause in someone's compliment, red flag. You sense hesitation in their support, logged. You notice a smile that doesn't reach their eyes, pattern identified. You stopped walking blindly into chaos, because now your scars light the way. They'll say you're overthinking, they'll call you paranoid. But what they don't know is your body keeps the receipts. Your nervous system became fluent in emotional microsignals. And your instincts, they've never missed since. Because you didn't bury the pain, you coded it. You didn't suppress the lesson, you systemized it. Now you move with surgical awareness. No wasted trust, no uncalculated risks, no tolerance for recycled manipulation. And no, this doesn't mean you're cold. It means you're calibrated. It means your heart has armor now, not walls, but sensors. And those sensors, they protect your peace like a fortress. You didn't just turn pain into wisdom, you turned it into pattern recognition. And now every lie stutters in front of you, every fake smile glitches, every manipulator hesitates because you're not guessing anymore. You know. Number 12. You made silence speak louder than their noise ever could. They wanted a reaction. You gave them silence. And in that silence, they heard everything they were afraid of. You used to answer every insult, defend every lie, clear up every rumor. You used to explain yourself to people who didn't even deserve your voice. But not anymore. Now, you let the silence speak. And the crazy part? It says more than you ever could with words. They don't know what to do with your quiet now. They can't read you, can't provoke you, can't decode whether you're done or just done talking, because you've made silence your power play. Silence isn't weakness. It's dominance without performance. When someone who used to thrive off your reactions no longer gets them, they start spiraling. They try harder, get louder, more dramatic. But it all collapses because their chaos can't survive without your attention. Imagine a puppet show with no audience. That's what you turned them into. You didn't even cut the strings. You just left the room. You're not ignoring people. You're choosing what's worthy of your energy. Every time you stay silent, you're saying, "This doesn't deserve my spirit." And it kills them. Because now they sit with the echo of what they tried to provoke in you, but never got. They wanted to control the story. You gave them a blank page. You weaponized stillness, and it made the loudest ones feel exposed. Silence is now your filter. It reveals who needs constant validation, who depends on conflict, who panics in your peace. Because people who have nothing real to offer will always collapse when they can't manipulate attention. You didn't go cold. You went deliberate. You learned to control the conversation by not having one. You realized that silence doesn't create distance. It creates clarity. And the best part? Now, your presence doesn't chase approval. It commands it. Your energy doesn't shout. It resonates, and your quiet doesn't retreat. It rules. You turned silence into a language only the wise can understand. And now the world's learning to listen. Number 13. You became the mirror, and that's why they can't look you in the eye. You don't absorb their projections anymore. You reflect them with precision so sharp it cuts their own illusions. You used to carry what wasn't yours. You internalized their guilt, their blame, their insecurities, until you started believing it was all your fault. Every time someone acted shady, you asked what you did wrong. Every time they withdrew love, you assumed you were unlovable. That's how they trained you, confuse you until you police your own power. But not anymore. Now, when they try to twist the truth, it snaps right back in their face. You see too clearly. You feel too deeply. You've trained your intuition to pick up on the micro signs they think they're hiding. You don't react to the illusion. They just flinch when they see themselves in your clarity. Imagine someone throwing mud at a mirror, expecting it to stick, but all it does is smear their own reflection. That's what you've become. Their accusations, their manipulation, their games. They don't land anymore. You don't absorb dysfunction. You expose it, and it terrifies them. Because the power of a mirror isn't just that it shows the truth, it shows it without bias. You're not trying to humiliate. You're not even trying to fight. You're just standing there, holding up the truth so raw, it burns the ones who can't face it. Your presence became a reality check for people addicted to illusion. They'll call you cold, distant, difficult, not because you are, but because they can no longer distort your reflection. You're not bending, shrinking, or explaining anymore. You're observing, and that alone puts them on edge. You've mastered emotional insulation. You're open to light, closed to deception, open to growth, closed to manipulation. You can love deeply without being blind. You can care without being controlled. They used to shape your identity by how they treated you. Now you shape the atmosphere just by walking in the room, because people know, around you, the mask slips. You didn't become cruel, you became clear. And clarity is the one thing a manipulator fears the most. You no longer chase being understood, you embody truth. You've turned your awareness into armor, your discernment into a shield, your boundaries into a warning sign that says, only the real survive here. You are the mirror now. And when they can't twist your image, they turn away, afraid of their own. And now, as the dust settles and the truth stands tall, one thing is clear. You didn't just evolve, you outgrew everything that once tried to control you. Your silence, your mindset, your detachment, your presence. It all became a weapon sharpened by awareness. You are no longer reacting to the world, you're reshaping it. And if you've felt every word of this deep in your core, you already know. You are the weapon they never saw coming. If you're walking this path too, drop 777 in the comments, like, subscribe, and share this with someone who needs to wake up.